Hi folks, welcome back to my little shop. I just got back from an 8-month timber framing job, and I got a lot of interest in my channel on the high-speed steel limiter tooling that I've been talking about. And I got a bunch of emails from folks with some questions, and I realized that sort of one of the aspects I never even talked about. People were wondering about how long it takes to swap out the knives on on this sort of standard limiter tooling. It doesn't take very long at all, but I'd like to talk about some of the little tricks that I've learned just to sort of help the process along in my time using the tooling. Okay, so let's say you walk out into your shop and you need to put a bead on some material. So you grab your block, and there it is. First thing I always do, because you want everything to seat properly, is you just clean it all out. Just make sure there's no sawdust or burr, and take a quick look, make sure there isn't any pitch built up anywhere. You just want to make sure that when the knives go in there, they're seated on the block properly and are not going to be misaligned as a result of a piece of sawdust or something like that. Now, so you've got your block, the wedges. You do the same thing with the wedges. Make sure they're all cleaned up and ready to go. So you grab your tooling that you're going to use. This is just some stock Whitehall beading cutters that I use. Alright, so typically, now not always, you have to know your tooling, what you're doing with it, and what your setup's going to be. But typically, of course, it's spinning counterclockwise. So the cutters are back here, and the limiters are up here. So here's a little trick that I use to help make it a little smoother. Now, it doesn't really matter which you put in first. So I'll put the cutter in first. Put the limiter in, of course, make sure everything's aligned properly. Alright, now, how I'm holding that is I'm just using the flesh of my finger. You don't want these things as you're reaching for the wedge block or something like that. You don't want these things, falling out or clacking together and ruining the edges or anything like that. So you want to kind of hold them in position. And what I'm doing with my finger, I'm sort of compressing it, trying to push it up way against the pins, and that seems to hold it in position really well. Because a lot of people are asking that, or I've heard some people commenting that they seem to need 3 hands in order to do this. But this is a technique that I found that seems to work pretty well. And then, of course, your wedge blocks are all clean, and they just slide in position. And once they're there, they're pretty good. You can just snug them up a little bit, and that'll usually keep them in position. Now, it'll be different with different blocks, but with a lot of them, where the studs go, on the bottom of the wedge blocks, where the studs go, there's a little recess location. You want to make sure that those studs are in there. So typically what I do is I get them started, and then I wiggle the wedge block back and forth a little bit. So I know those studs are hitting back and forth on the little recessed bit there. So I know that it's not, for example, too far off to one side and not fully engaged on the block where it's supposed to be. Now, a lot of the manufacturers will give you torque settings for how tight these should be. I'll be honest, I don't break out the torque wrench every time I do this. So what my approach to it is, and this isn't going to sound very scientific because it's not, is I make them tight. I don't make them, with all your might, grunt and swear tight. Just tight. You have tremendous mechanical advantage, especially if you're using one of these. These ones are really easy. I find it really easy to sort of get in there at the wedge block without hitting the knives. So you've got tremendous mechanical advantage. The threads are fairly fine, and of course, the wedging action, the whole work. It's quite easy to get it tightened up. You don't have to come onto that with all your might and risk stripping threads or breaking something. So we'll just do the next one here to be complete. We've made sure that the steel is clean. We know the block is clean. Put it on the pins. There it is. Same thing with the limiter. Now, I have not done this in about 8 months, but so I'm not really slick at it right now, but there it is. Put the wedge block in, get it started, and it will hold itself. There it is. Slide it back and forth a little bit. This is what I do just to verify that it's in the little recessed locations for the bottom of the studs, and snug it up. And there you go. So you can look at the little slider thing in the bottom and you can get a sense of how long it took me to do that. Of course, I was talking a little bit in there. But anyway, it doesn't take very long at all. Thank you.